audience is very familiar with our self-hosted solution. It's been around a while, right? We know we're familiar, we use it a lot. But today we want to walk you through some of the integrations with our other products that can make things work a bit better together, right? How are we adding pieces to the puzzle to resolve problems more quickly? And I'm going to take us through a couple of those, and then I'm going to bring in some lovely guests to talk about some things in more detail. So let's get started with database, right? And we have had for a long time an integration with our database product, Database Performance Analyzer. And some of the things that you can see in there, we're going to jump to our databases summary. And you can get some additional insights. Now, you might be familiar with App Insight for SQL, for instance. So we have built applications in our application monitoring and management piece of the puzzle that covers some of these things, right? But it's not quite the same level of insights. Database Performance Analyzer has built-in machine learning and things like that to learn and figure out where those anomalies are, where they can make recommendations. They can tell you about query tuning, and we can't really do that with our self-hosted offering all on its own. These are insights that are being pulled from Database Performance Analyzer into our self-hosted solution so that you can kind of see things in the same place. So we've got a few different metrics here, and then we can drill down even further and get more information if we pick on like this Knox SQL 01, for instance. We've got information in here from our App Insight, and then also you can see here on the left, we've got metrics being pulled over from Database Performance Analyzer as well. You can see how you can have all of the information in one place, and it'll help you get those insights more quickly. The next integration that I want to talk to you about is our security integration. We're making a connection between our self-hosted observability solution and our security products. It does require licensing in those security products, but if you have any of those products, Patch Manager, Security Event Manager, or Access Rights Manager, you can pull those insights into your security dashboard so we can see everything in one place again. You get better insights, you can see everything in one place, you don't have to jump around between all the platforms, and you can have it be connected as well. New to this latest release this February, we also have a vulnerability and risk dashboard, which we're really excited to share with you. And this kind of gives you a high-level risk assessment in your environment that's being drawn from CVEs, and you can also do pull CPEs in to get this information. So you have that at a glance. These are where our risks are. You can get more information on the CVEs here, and you have all of it there so you can take care of that. Let's dig into the meat of this session where we're going to walk through some of the benefits you can gain from integrating our two observability solutions, as well as integrating our self-hosted observability solution with our service desk solution. And to that end, I have an expert with me here for our SaaS solution, Bryce Mata. Thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into this.
My name's Bryce. I live in Michigan. I've ran application performance monitoring software for a few years at a lot of different organizations, and I'm currently a solutions engineer over here at SolarWinds, specifically for our SaaS products, which includes the SaaS observability solution.
In the past at Webcast and even perhaps at past Thwack Camp, we've talked a little bit about Platform Connect, which is the piece of the puzzle that connects the two solutions together. So our self-hosted solution to our SaaS solution. But what can you actually get out of that, out of the SaaS solution? Like, what are we getting out of it? What additional benefits do we get from connecting that data up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the SaaS observability solution really has a lot of functionality when it comes to integrating natively with cloud platforms. So with AWS and Azure, you can hook up your actual cloud accounts and pull in all of those CloudWatch metrics, those Azure Insights, and be able to kind of centralize that information with the same tool that you might have all of your on-prem information coming into as well.
So talk to me a little bit about the health score and what it does and why it's beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have an observability platform like this and you're gaining full stack visibility into lots of different areas of your environment, it can become kind of cumbersome or overwhelming to have all of that telemetry into one place. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So, the real value of these tools is to be able to leverage them to do the hard stuff for you, bubbling up problems to you that you didn't otherwise know were an issue, right? And one of the ways that we do that with the SaaS observability solution is we have a layer of AI and machine machine learning on the back end. So every time you add something to that platform, we baseline the performance, we establish what the normal performance behaviors and patterns of that thing are. And then when they start to deviate from that norm, we can bubble that up to you in the form of anomaly detection. So we'll let you know when things are starting to act differently. And that's really helpful when it comes to proactive monitoring instead of reactive, right? You don't want to know when something is just down. You want to know when performance is degrading and heading toward being down.
Yeah, absolutely. Cut those problems off before they actually become a real problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple different ways that we do that. We have the anomaly detection, the baselining of the performance. But the other thing that we do is we calculate a health score. So this health score calculation, it takes into account some specific metrics. It takes into account the anomaly detection. It can also take into account alerts that have been triggered from the system. So if we take a look at this home page here, you can kind of get a sense of the anomaly detection widgets, but you'll also see the breakdown of the health score across what we call entity types. So everything you monitor in the SAS observability solution, we just consider an entity. And there are these different entity types that are categories that they would fall into. For example, if I were to come up here and click on this add data button, just to give you a sense of what these categories would be, you can see we have website and URI entity types that would be used for front-end monitoring. We have synthetic capabilities, real user monitoring capabilities through those. We have database agents for getting deep-level metrics about your database platforms, whether they're in the cloud or on-prem. We have host agents for getting things like CPU, memory, network, disk, see all the processes running on your hosts. APM agents for instrumenting different application languages and frameworks, right? So you'll notice when I return to like the overview page here, we have a widget for each entity type, and you can see the number of entities per entity type that we're monitoring, but you can also see that breakdown from the health score that we're calculating. So this overview screen is really designed to give you that first at-a-glance view so you can have that high-level holistic view into your environment, and that may prompt where you want to go next in the tool.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like there's a lot to work with to augment the kind of the data that you're used to seeing on the self-hosted side of things, which is, more server statistics, network statistics, that kind of thing. And now we can augment that with even more information and get like a holistic view so that we can reach those resolutions sooner.
Yeah, and that really is the idea. It's about being able to quickly identify what the issue is and get that information that, one of my services is performing poorly. One of my websites has an anomaly where the response time is higher than it normally is on a Monday at 5 p.m. That kind of information, just to seed and kind of prompt you is really the value there. So now you know where to go, start your investigation. And if you notice on the left here, the navigation, we kind of have all these different areas that you would expect to find those different entity types in. So DEM just stands for Digital Experience Monitoring. That's going to be where you find that front-end monitoring, those synthetic checks, the real user monitoring, APM, Application Performance Monitoring, database monitoring, network. You'll notice that this is kind of going in line with the way maybe a request would travel, right? You hit the front end first, you go to the application layer, you might make some requests to a database, you've got the network layer, you might have everything running in a Kubernetes cluster, and then you get to your infrastructure layer. And the really key point of this is that all of that information is getting correlated together. And so when I come into this overview page and I see that there's an anomaly with a website, I could start in DEM, but that anomaly may be because, the application itself is performing poorly, or the underlying infrastructure is having like an issue with resource exhaustion. So the idea is that everything in that navigation should be a starting point. We can start from DEM, we might end up in APM, we might end up in database, we might end up in the infrastructure area.
Yeah, so getting away from the old blame game, right? Well, this is slow, so it's definitely the network. Well, that is usually because they don't know where it's coming from. They just don't want it to be their problem, so it's now someone else's problem. This one, at least, you can kind of go down the line and figure out where the problem actually lies.
Exactly. And one of the other ways that we can help with the blame game is that with the correlation that's going on in the back end, we can actually see a visualization that's drawn up by the platform of those relationships. So you'll notice I'm in a Java application right now. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom of this overview page, we'll see what we call a topology map. And this is an automated visualization that's just showing us the relationships between all of those entities that have, potential to impact each other. And it's interactive too, right? This platform is designed to give you different avenues to traverse that environment. Whether I want to start looking at one of these EC2 nodes that might be, running this Java application and see what the performance is from this pop-out summary panel right here. And then I could choose, if I want to click this View Details button and switch gears all the way to reviewing that EC2 node now. It's really about giving ease of use, letting you just kind of get from point A to point B, wherever you need to go, depending on the investigation and the context.
Yeah, awesome. I see you've got a bunch of tabs up there at the top of this page here for the, you're on the overview, which kind of gives you the general view, high level view of everything, but you've got some specific things. I know you can look into like individual traces and all your drill down into metrics and everything there. Yeah. So, is that kind of similar to before, where you just kind of walk down the line as you're troubleshooting?
This is kind of the convention throughout all of these different areas in the navigation. They're all going to start with an overview so that you can just get those high level KPIs right out of the way. I can see, for example, when it comes to this Java app, right? I can see my average trace response time breakdowns. I can see where that response time is being spent. Is it being spent on our Swapper front-end Java application, or is it being spent on a remote application that our front-end application talks to? Is it being spent on a database that it talks to? I can see my HTTP status code breakdowns. I can see request rates. I can also see response time by different percentiles, right? Lots of different ways to kind of look at this data that might be relevant to understanding what the performance is, right? And this is all over the time frame that I have selected up in the top right. So right now it's the last hour, but I could, go through the different time selection presets or use a custom time picker to find a specific point in time that I might be interested in. But like you said, this is the overview screen. So if I really wanted to dig in deeper, I can use those tabs up at the top to go look at the more specific areas. So for example, if I were to go to the Insights tab, let's say our front-end service talks to some other services, which it does, and we can see here in the Remote Services tab, all of those different services that we make calls out to. And you'll notice that some of those services, they're hyperlinked. And that just means that those services have APM agents on them. So if I were to click on them, I could go and get the same level of deep insights into those applications as I can with this front-end service we're looking at right now. But obviously, sometimes you don't have the capability of putting an APM agent on the back end of some of the services you rely on or make calls to, right? These could be third-party services you really rely on and maybe have SLAs established with even. I can still see that we make calls out to those services. I can see the type of request being made. I can see the request method. I can see the total duration. And I can also see in this occurrences column right here, the number of requests in the time frame that I have selected that we've made to those remote endpoints. And so this is still very valuable information, right? I could click on this 29 right here, and that's going to drop me into a trace request view where I can see a heat map, a distributed heat map that shows me all of the requests that were made to those remote endpoints. You can see it applied some filters right here in the search bar so that I'm only seeing those requests with activity to those remote endpoints. And so here I could start to drill down into those specific requests and start to see how it was affecting our application from the application layer.
Awesome. That's all great stuff. I don't want to ignore our longtime audience, and I don't want to look at the network bits of this a bit, right? Like what are we doing in the SaaS observability that's different on the network side of things from our self-hosted?
Sure, that's a great question. Now, we do have the Platform Connect integration option, like you mentioned earlier. So you do have the ability to funnel in telemetry that's collected from your on-prem solution into the SaaS solution here. But we also have some native ways of collecting telemetry from network devices, similar to how we do on the on-prem side. So you'll notice when I click on this Add Data button that I have this network device entity type option. The network device area here is going to show me how to deploy a network collector to a Windows host so that I can go out and discover other network devices and even hypervisors or hosts over things like SNMP or WMI. I can also gain NetFlow traffic, and there's also a NetPath feature through this area.
Now, NetPath, you're speaking my language because NetPath is one of my favorite pieces of technology on the self-hosted side of things.
So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the network area and show you some of the different things that we can pull in from that network collector on the SaaS side. Once you deploy that collector, you can configure it to discover different network devices over SNMP. And you can see, similarly to the on-prem solution, we're going to auto-categorize all of those different devices for you. I can see what my routers are, switches, wireless controllers, firewalls. I can also use this funnel icon to filter through those different devices with different criteria as well. Maybe I want to look at specific vendors. So I could just come to the vendor dropdown here and select something like Cisco, right? And then from here, I could look at, specific Cisco models even. If I go to the machine type dropdown, maybe I want to look at one of these Catalyst stacks. So I can go ahead and filter on that. And it's going to show me all of the relevant devices based on that information. With the network features of the SaaS solution, we can also gain insights through NetPath. So if I come up here to this diagnostics tab under the network area, and then I go to NetPath, I can see some of the different endpoints that we've set up here. I'll just go into this one so we can take a look at some of the data already populated. And there we go. We can see a visualization of the actual network path. And if I scroll down a little bit further here, you'll also see the event timeline that corresponds to that net path. So we can see there is an event back toward this area. If I go ahead and select that, we'll see that the visualization kind of reflects some changes in the net path. And also, it looks like we have one node in between that may have experienced some packet loss or some other kind of degradation. And we do see a 16% packet loss on that area. So you can see how you can use the SaaS solution on its own natively to gain some insights into the network information. And you could also use it in addition to the on-prem solution as well.
Well, this is all really great, Bryce. Thank you for sharing it with us. I think that something else that's really interesting in the difference between the two solutions is that, with the self-hosted solution, we do have some cloud capabilities, but it's more designed to handle a lot more of the features and capabilities that you need for your on-premises things. Like it will do some cloud, but if you're primarily cloud, you want to look more towards the SaaS solution. Can you walk us through a little bit of the insights we can gain from our cloud environments in the SaaS platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is true. I mean, we have native integration with AWS and Azure through the SaaS platform. Through the SaaS solution. If I come up to this add data screen, this is where you would be able to onboard any one of your cloud accounts, either across AWS or Azure. And you can have multiple accounts hooked up. It's very straightforward and simple. It's basically just supplying some account information. On the Azure side, there's like a client secret that you would generate on the Azure side and supply into the wizard to kind of set it up. On the AWS side, it's just a CloudFormation template that you would use. It's going to generate the role ARN information on AWS. You supply that back into the wizard. And then for both different platforms, AWS or Azure, you have the choice of, what services do you actually want to bring into the SaaS solution. You don't have to choose everything. You can choose which resources or services you want to bring in. And you can also follow instructions for bringing the logs from either platform into this tool. So you can truly make this your centralized area for telemetry, regardless of if it's on-prem or in the cloud. If we go ahead and take a look at some examples here, if I go back to APM, and we kind of saw an example of this service earlier, I'll just go ahead and click on this Java service, Swapper front end, right? This is our front end service built on Java, and this is running in a Kubernetes cluster in AWS. So I can see right here that this is a Java service, and I can see the cluster that it belongs to. And this is really the value of the SaaS solution here. It's going to correlate this data together. These are all automatically detected relationships. I don't have to configure this manually and tell it belongs to this cluster, it belongs to this deployment, it's part of AWS. If I scroll all the way to the bottom here and we take a look at that topology map, the automated visualization of the relationships, right? This actually shows me the two EC2 nodes that are running most of the application landscape that the front end service is a part of. And so I can see these two EC2 nodes, and I can see that we have EBS volumes attached to them, right? So this is combining information coming from that AWS Cloud Account integration with the APM agent. And not only with the APM agent, it's combining the Kubernetes integration. If we go back here, I can see that this is a part of a Kubernetes cluster called Swapper right here. And I could click on these elements and actually see sort of a peek into the performance so that I could choose if I want to switch gears and start reviewing one of those instead.
I like too about this topology map that it shows you the health score on each of these as well. So it's like there's a visual number score, and then there's also the status coloring that you would expect to see in something like this, but it's kind of a both situation. So you get an at-a-glance view of where you might be experiencing an issue throughout the whole life cycle of this thing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the idea here is that these are not islands, right? These all exist and relate to each other on some level. And there's implications there that they could, impact each other at the same time. So just because my Swapper front end service, for example, might have a bad health score, it doesn't mean that it's just the front end's problem, right? That could be caused because a database is taking a long time to respond. It could be caused because a remote service we don't actually have an APM agent on is taking a long time to respond. Or maybe it's the underlying infrastructure. Maybe the EC2 nodes are having issues with, memory exhaustion. Maybe there's a memory leak in the application. So this is really the idea, is providing that scope visually and also giving you those very quick at-a-glance cues. That health score is going to help with that. The anomaly detection is going to help with that. And then you can set up your alerting based on any of the raw data that you're pulling in, whether it's CloudWatch metrics, whether it's metrics that you're getting from those APM agents, or any of the other integrations that you've set up in your SaaS solution environment.
Now, you mentioned anomaly detection a few times here, and I don't want to gloss over too much, but there is, of course, on the self-hosted side, anomaly-based alerting, which is a newer feature, which does require integration via Platform Connect to our SaaS solution. We're not going to get into any of the details of that because we're going to be covering that in the alerting session that's happening later. So be sure to tune into that if you want to learn more about anomaly-based alerting. Thank you, Bryce, so much for sharing with us some of the insights that you can gain from our SaaS observability solution to augment the data that you're already getting from your self-hosted solution. It's been a wonderful learning experience, and I appreciate you being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Now that we've shown you how our observability solutions work together, let's talk a little bit about how our observability solutions work with our Service Desk solution. And to that end, I have with me David Russell, who's our product expert for SolarWinds Service Desk.
Thank you, Crystal. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Thwack Camp, or welcome to this session of Thwack Camp. My name is David Russell. I'm one of the solution engineers with the ITSM or Service Desk product at SolarWinds. I've been working with the tool for almost a decade now, coming on 8 years in April. I actually come from our customer success team, where I work directly with customers, helping them get value out of the tool, work with them on their specific or unique use cases, which it really is what gets me excited today to kind of show you even some of the newer features and things that we can do within the Service Desk to make sure that those unique use cases, and today specifically around some standard operating procedures and working through critical issues when you do get those alerts, to make sure things get resolved quickly and make sure all the steps are taken with an audit trail behind them, so we know exactly what we're doing and making sure that all those operating procedures are met every time a critical issue pops up.
We're going to skip a few steps, including the how to actually do the integration and a little bit about sending the alert from HCO into Service Desk, because that's going to be covered at a later session. So feel free to join, automate your way to peace and happiness. We're going to jump into what SolarWinds Service Desk can bring additional to just bringing in those alerts as incidents. So talk to us a little bit about what else we can get out of our Service Desk solution.
And the big thing is, I pull up my screen here. As I jump into the demo here, that's really what gets me excited, and in kind of showing off what we can do within Service Desk is really take those alerts that are coming from observability to the next level. So step one, which you'll hear in the later sessions, is the alert's just creating a ticket, creating an incident, generating a ticket that we need to take action on. And where Service Desk comes into play and can take us those steps further is, now that we know XYZ is happening, or in this case, in the example, we know server 31 is reporting offline. Well, for us, that's a critical issue, because server 31 is hosting XYZ applications. It's a critical server, to what we're doing every day. So if it's reporting offline, what actions, what steps, who do we need to involve in order to get this service restored and get people back to being able to do their job. So as we click in here, first things first, this alert, and this is what's coming from the observability side. So we know the information right away. Hey, this is going on. Within Service Desk, the ticket gets created. I know we'll talk about this on later sessions, but we can automate straight away that this automatically gets assigned as a critical priority because we know, like I said, Server 31 is a big deal. So if something goes wrong, it's automatically critical. It gets assigned straight up to Charles, who's our admin, or our point person for these type of events. But where we can take it a step further, even beyond just our comments, our notes, hey team, XYZ is going on, let's call in the dogs. We're going to jump into this process piece. And you'll notice here, there isn't a run book yet, but for me as a technician, when I know we've got a critical alert, we're going to make it easy within Service Desk to take all the necessary actions, have an audit trail behind those actions that get taken, and we've already got that built. So rather than me having to think about, oh geez, server went down, what do I need to do? What steps do I need to take? I simply add the run book. I can start the process right away. So again, skip a step of me having to click some extra buttons. And I'm going to add that run book here. And right away, that's going to create, and you can already see it's moved through a few steps already. It's updated the status. It's sent out notifications to the team. So without me having to send emails or notify people along the way, the system's doing that automatically because we know every time we get a critical alert like this from this server, we need to notify Will. We need to move this ticket into the appropriate hands. So we've sent the notifications. We've updated the record. First things first for me, I need to verify the physical connections and the power status to this server. So I can run down to the server room or call out to a team member to say, check on things, but I'm going to take that step and verify, yes, things are online, or no, it's not offline. It doesn't have power at all. And that's step one. Step two, I need to review the error report. So that same alert that triggered the ticket and the incident here that let me kick off these standard operating procedures or add this run book, HCO is going to provide me that error report. I'm able to go in, see the details, figure out exactly what caused this error, and check that box to say, yep, done that too. So now again, we've got the audit trail behind David verifying the power source, verifying that he's reviewed, and now we actually send an approval out to Will, who needs to make sure that we can return power to this server. So this is going to generate an email off to Will. Will's going to get it right away in the top of his inbox. He's going to be able to click approve or decline right from there, which would then take me to the next step in the workflow. For sake of example, and because I don't have access to Will's email here, I'm just going to change this to me. But again, predefined, we know who it needs to go to. So the appropriate approvals go out. That user or that team, I know we've sent these to individuals, but they can also be sent to groups of people so that multiple people get notified. Or in an approval scenario, if David can't get to it right away, or if Charles can't get to it right away, or Will can't get to it right away, we can send it to a group of all of them. So the first person who can take action can approve. And then it moves us again to that next step. So once we've restored power, I'm going to check that box, and it's going to take me to the next step. Make sure you review the physical error codes on the front panel. So I'm going to review those codes. And then again, next step, verify the cables and the connections. Verify the modem, routers, switches, make sure everything's online. And I know I'm clicking this through my desktop here, but one of the beauties of Service Desk is this is all available on your phone too. So if I'm down in that server room, panicking, scrambling, looking for XYZ, I don't even need to bring my laptop, pull out my cell phone. I'm going to see these same workflow steps right in the palm of my hand, and I'm just going to check the boxes as I go along. And you can see in our case, there are a lot of steps that we need to take, but that's, again, in order to make sure that that service is, one, restored, but two, restored correctly, and then also giving us the audit trail to say, hey, David did this, Charles did this, when, date stamp, time stamp, so we know exactly who took what actions, and at what time.
And as you're going through this, I can see that these are assigned to specific people. And in a lot of cases are assigned to the same person. Now, those assignments are made when you create the runbook originally, or are those assignments done on an automated basis?
So both. They are defined in this example here that I've actually built out. I've defined that the task or the steps go to the ticket assignee, which in this case is Charles. But you can see even here, if I want to reassign it to another group or another team, I can change it on the fly. Or when I actually build the set of operating procedures or the run book here, I can define which team or which group needs to complete which step. So especially in those situations where it's not Charles or it's not David who can take all the necessary actions, we can define the run book to send it to the appropriate teams or the appropriate people that need to take those actions and have that cross collaboration between those different groups and individuals to, again, making sure that we can get everything done quickly and get this service restored as fast as possible. So again, we're going through, and the final step is we're going to test everything. And then once things are good to go, the ticket's going to close out. We've hit all the steps we need to take. We followed the correct operating procedures. And through this all, that audit trail I've been talking about, it's going to show us every step, everything that's been approved, all those steps that have been taken. And the audit trail is going to show exactly who, what, when for all of these, including all the emails that go out, all the tasks that have been created. So it really does make it easy for an organization. And I know in this example, there was a lot of steps we had to take, to make sure that we restored this server. You can build these run books to be as simple as escalate to the tier 3 team and wipe your hands clean. Or again, in this case, as complex as, hey, here's the 20 different things we have to do to make sure that we meet all the requirements to get this server back online.
I love the idea of using these for any of these hot processes, right? I mean, you may get a new person to the team, and this keeps you from having to hand hold the whole time. You've got a process built. You're going to take these steps every time. Go ahead and bake that into your response in there. That's great, and it includes all those approval processes. You talked a lot about building a run book, but how challenging is it to actually go build the run book when you do have a generating incident that you say this is happening frequently enough that we know all the steps that we're going to take to do this, and let's go ahead and create a run book for it. What does that process look like?
Yeah, really, really simple. And in fact, I can jump in and show you guys that there. But I always tell customers, if you can draw it on a whiteboard or map it out on paper, you can put it into the service desk. The setup, the build of this, it's all click, drag, and drop. So if I click into setup, and I won't spend too much time on this, but just to show everybody, within the setup, and again, this can be limited to admin, so you don't have your tier 1 technicians going into setup and removing some steps in the run book to try to make their life easier. But I've got a bunch of different examples here. Whether a VPN's gone down, an end user's got malware on their computer, and all of these have their own set of steps and definitions or operating procedures that are required. And it's as simple as clicking the plus button and creating the workflow, whether it is just a set of tasks, step 1, step 2, step 3. If I need to send out approvals, at any point in time, or even just have the system send out some automated notifications. So yeah, maybe David needs to complete step 1, but as soon as that's done, I need to notify anybody and everybody. So I can send notifications as part of the run book to different people, to different groups. So it makes it easy rather than, again, me having to go out to email, make sure that I'm adding the right people to that email or sending it to the right distro list. We can build that in right within the notification here. But for anyone who's familiar with the application, it's the same workflow engine that exists in the service catalog and the change catalog as well. So really easy to build out. Everything's click, drag, and drop, unless we get into those process integrations where it is a little coding to call out to an external system.
Well, at a really high level, talk to me a little bit about the change catalog and service catalog. What is that? What does it do?
And that's kind of a perfect segue in. And if prior to me clicking away, back on that ticket where we had the run book that we ran through, under this related tab, I actually have that server 31. We're also tracking it in the service desk. So I've got a relationship created between the ticket and the actual asset record. So let's say we did run through, the scope of work or the standard operating procedures, the run book in our case, where we got it back online. And then next week, the same thing happens. And now David's running through the big, long run book again, where we're calling in the dogs, everybody's getting notified, and we're going through this once a week. Probably a bigger problem than just the alert coming through, saying, hey, we need to do X, Y, Z. So that's where we can get in and actually on this same related tab, right from here, from the ticket itself, I could create a problem record, and specify, hey, I've got a problem with server 31. XYZ keeps happening. We need to work to improve that. If we've got an open problem already, makes it easy for me to link it to something that already exists, or simply create a new problem record right from the ticket where I can put in that information. Server 31's having issues. Obviously, you'd want to get a bit more detailed in here, but what's the root cause? What are the symptoms we're seeing? What are the workarounds? Additional data points, custom fields live in the problem record too. So if we want to know the processes affected, the people affected, the product or vendor, that's involved in this, all those data points can be captured within the problem record. And then you'll see the related items there too, where we can add the asset, add the original ticket. And that kind of brings us to that next step, the changes. If we know, again, we've got a bigger problem with server 31 because every week we keep getting tickets where we're running through the run book, making sure it's back online. We're wasting, or I don't want to say wasting because we're restoring the service, but spending a lot of time doing this weekly, when there's better things that we could be doing. We create the problem record, we work through it, we identify the symptoms, the root cause, and try to fix it right there. But that's not always going to work. So in those situations where we discover a problem, we realize the cause, the symptoms, we then need to change something about server 31. That brings us into that change side where, again, I could do it right from within a ticket or within the change modules here. But we'll walk through this example from within the ticket. We're just like the problem. I could link it to an existing change. If we're already going through a change or, a server upgrade, I could link it right there or create a new one. So again, we've identified a problem. We know there's an issue with server 31. Now we can go through our change process. What are we changing? What's the plan, to upgrade or make the changes necessary to this server? What's the rollback plan if it doesn't work? How are we going to test this? How are we going to verify?
Definitely other features of the service desk which are powerful and will help resolve problems quickly. And that all can be used in conjunction with the data that you're getting out of your observability platforms. Get to those solutions faster and develop processes that can be used by others. Thank you, David, so much for sharing this with us and walking us through kind of how this works. I think it's really exciting. And if anyone's interested to see more service desk content, they're going to be walking through the process of setting up that integration and automate your way to peace and happiness, and talking a little bit more about that incident relationship piece with our self-hosted observability solution later on in ThwackCamp.
And please feel free to reach out to your service desk team too. You can see how excited I get about this stuff. So we are happy to connect and walk through your specific use cases and help you guys get this set up.
And of course, as always, stay active in the chat, ask us questions. We've got loads of product experts on standby to answer questions in the chat. So let us know.